The Muppets. For over 60 years, they've been entertaining kids,
A, B, C, D, E, F, to Cookie Monster.
and adults alike.
Look, Mother, it's my life, okay? So if I want to live on a beach and walk around naked...
Kermit, I thought you were the one person on the show who wasn't crazy.
Me not crazy?
Old-fashioned way.
And you might be familiar with Frank Oz, Jim's close collaborator.
You are all weirdos.
Very weird. I mean, I will be quiet like this.
And then you talk like that, you go crazy.
Phenomena.
ABC said no. CBS said no. NBC said no. Then a man in Britain paid for it. And when American stations were shown the first finished episodes, they said no too.
Okay, Zoot, that's enough. Good. Hey.
2 years later, that same show was reaching 235 million people in more than 100 countries.
Statler and Waldorf, the two old gentlemen who usually sit up here, have died.
The most successful people in American television had it in their hands, and every one of them passed. So what did every American TV expert fail to see?
Thank you. Thank you. Hi-ho, and welcome to the Muppet Show, everybody.
The show America refused to see. Start with the rejection, because it's stranger than you think. Jim Henson wasn't some unknown pitching a first idea. By the mid-1970s, he was one of the most successful puppeteers in television. Networks knew him. They liked him. They still said no. And here's the part that confused everyone. Henson wasn't offering a kids show. He wanted a nighttime variety series. Songs, sketches, big celebrity guests, grown-up entertainment.
It's harder because there are not the platforms, there's not the whole television system around us that we work with in a studio. On the other hand, it's fun. It's a challenge to try to create a reality there.
But it starred puppets, and that broke the network's brain. To an executive, puppets meant children. Movie stars meant adults. Henson's show was both at once, and television had no shelf for that. Too odd for the grown-up hour, too strange for the kids' hour.
The dancer Rudolf Nureyev, who was queer, here he is in a steam room with a pig trying to get into his armpits. When Nureyev met Richard Hunt backstage, the first thing the dancer said to him was, "You love to suck, don't you?"
Nobody could say where it belonged, so nobody would pay for it. Now picture Henson hearing no from every network in the country, holding an idea he was sure would work. The frustrating part wasn't the rejection. It was that he'd already been trying to make this exact show for 16 years. He'd been building it since 1960.
Hey, give me a cigar over there.
Here it is, boss.
Thank you. You do good work, fella.
You criminal.
This wasn't a gamble Henson threw together. It was a plan he'd been quietly assembling for most of his career. Back around 1960, he'd already sketched the shape of it. A troupe of puppet characters like an old theater company, famous guest hosts, a frog somewhere near the center. The idea existed early. What Henson did next was prove it, piece by piece. He tested the characters on talk shows. He tested the comedy in commercials and specials. On Sesame Street, he proved puppets could make millions of people feel something real.
The necessity of doing a shot like this, in order to make it look good up there, it has to be uncomfortable down here.
So one by one, the parts all worked. The characters landed. The style landed. The warmth landed. Only one piece was missing. A single executive willing to put all of it together in one show. He couldn't find that person, so he stopped asking and started proving. He'd build a pilot, put the whole thing on screen, and make them see it. He made 2 of them. Both created brand new problems. The 2 pilots that didn't sell.
Know what your son, Whis, is doing?
What, has he locked himself in the bathroom with a magazine again?
No, your son, Whis, is smoking craters.
On top of Old Smoky!
The first pilot leaned hard on story and sweetness. It was gentle and a little slow, and it didn't convince anyone. So Henson swung the other way, hard. The second pilot was built to shock the networks out of their assumption. He gave it a deliberately provocative title, the kind that shouted, "This is not for children." It was packed with fast, strange, grown-up sketches, and it introduced a room full of characters you would one day know by heart. Early Gonzo, early Miss Piggy, the Swedish chef, the hecklers in the balcony, the house band. They were all in there. But watch what was actually happening. The host wasn't Kermit. The characters had no depth yet. The sketches had no thread holding them together. The ingredients were all on the table. The recipe hadn't been written. So the bold pilot didn't fix the problem. It made the show even harder to label. Now buyers weren't just confused, they were unsettled. Then NBC handed Henson what looked like the perfect stage to prove adult puppets could work. It turned into a public disaster. Saturday Night Live made it look impossible.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the first screening of the Muppet movie.
In 1975, a brand new late-night show gave Henson a regular spot. He built a segment for it called The Land of Gorch, puppets for adults, full of jokes about sex, drugs, and drink. On paper, this was his proof, a grown-up show, a grown-up audience. His Muppets in the middle of it. It fell apart almost immediately. And the reason is the whole point. Picture the writer's room. Late at night, a comedy writer draws the short straw, because someone has to write the puppet sketch and nobody wants to. The head writer finally says it out loud. He will not write for felt. He means it as a joke. He also means it. Under his breath, someone starts calling them the mucking Fuppets. Here's what was really going on underneath the insults. Union rules meant Henson's own writers weren't allowed to write the segments.
And then we broke for lunch and they let him out and he couldn't get unfolded for 15 or 20 minutes to get himself straightened out.
The show's writers had to, and every second a puppet was on camera, one of them wasn't. So the funniest people in the building were being forced to write for characters they wanted gone. The Muppets were trapped in a world that didn't understand their tone, voiced by people who didn't want them there. But look closer at what actually failed. It wasn't the idea of adult puppets, it was the strings. Who was holding them? And that handed Henson the rule that would save everything. The Muppets needed a world of their own. He'd learned the lesson. America still wouldn't pay to build the world. The man in Britain who saw it.
He's actually gone. Will we ever forget him? Who? You know, what's his name?
America rejected it. Britain didn't. That sounds simple. It wasn't. The rescue came from a cigar-chewing British showman named Lew Grade, a man who'd been making television since the medium was young, and who'd had his eye on the Muppets since the 50s. Picture him behind a desk in London, cigar going, looking at the exact same show every American network had just refused. He saw money. They saw a problem. Same show, opposite men. Because Grade understood one thing they couldn't. He wasn't scared of a puppet.
I always feel the magic of the puppets is really the way they come to life and the way you can look at this piece of cloth or foam rubber and you make it a real character and you believe it and you like it and you laugh at it. To me, that's real magic.
He offered Henson millions for a first season, real commitment with one heavy condition. The whole production had to move to England. It meant asking his closest people, like longtime writer Jerry Jewell, to pack up their lives and cross an ocean to follow him. And here's the trap hidden inside the good news. Grade could finance the show, he could not make America buy it. The plan was to make it in Britain and sell it one station at a time around the world. So this wasn't a victory, it was a huge, expensive bet placed overseas with no American audience promised. And before a single viewer saw a frame, Henson had to swallow one more hard condition. The writer, who understood his characters best, would not be allowed to run the writing room. The wrong writer in charge. The one writer Henson trusted most was about to spend months watching someone else shape his dream. His name was Jerry Jewell, and he'd written for Henson for years. He understood the thing that made the Muppets work. Not the jokes, but the heart underneath the jokes. He was the obvious choice to lead the writing. He didn't get the job. The people funding the show wanted a bigger, more established comedy name at the top.
You big, dumb, stupid, rotten monster! You make me so mad I don't believe it! You are without a doubt one of the nastiest monsters I've ever seen!
So the chair went to Jack Burns instead, and Jewell quietly agreed to work beneath him. Burns was genuinely talented, but his instinct pulled one direction. Setup, punchline, next. Fast, clean, professional jokes. And that is not what a Muppet is. A Muppet is funny because you love it. The comedy grows out of character and warmth and a kind of sweet absurdity. Strip that away, leave only the jokes, and the whole thing goes cold. So look at where the show stood, financed at last, and run at the top by a man who didn't quite speak its language. The people paying for it still didn't trust the people who dreamed it up. That kind of distrust never stays hidden. It always ends up on the screen. It was about to. Even after it was saved, America said no again. Henson filmed 2 episodes to sell the show. Test episodes built to convince American stations to buy. American buyers watched them and gave almost exactly the same answer the networks had. No.
Sometimes the crown weighs rather heavy on this little froggy head.
Sit with that. Britain had financed the dream. The dream was finally on film. and it still wasn't working. The problems were real. The opening dragged, the pacing crawled, the backstage scenes fell flat. There was even a romance subplot for Kermit that felt wrong for who he was. Even Grade's own American producer thought parts felt too British for the States. This was the lowest point of the whole story. 16 years of work, an ocean crossed, and the finished show still didn't exist. Now picture the room. The notes are finished, everyone's waiting to see how the man who bet everything takes the news that it isn't good enough. Henson doesn't argue. He stands there a moment, quiet, letting it land. Then he says simply that it isn't the end of the world, and he goes and has a drink with his producer. That's the whole man in one moment. No panic, no blame, because he had no time for either. 22 more episodes were already due, and he was going to figure out what the show even was while the cameras were rolling. They rebuilt it while making it. Stop for a second and picture how a television show normally gets made. There's a development period, months of it. The writers argue, the format gets locked, the formula gets perfected, all behind closed doors long before you see a frame. By the time it airs, the show already knows exactly what it is. The Muppet Show had none of that. No pause, no safety. The season was due and it had to be shot now. So they did the impossible thing. They fixed the show in public, on camera, one episode at a time. Episode 1 teaches them a lesson. Episode 2 exposes a new flaw. Each mistake gets quietly corrected in the next thing they shoot. Weak segments die. Strong ones get fed. The writers learn to stitch the sketches together with the backstage story. And the musical numbers do secret work.
How long have you been a nurse?
Well, what time is it?
They buy each performer time to figure out who their character even is. Here's the strange gift hidden in all that panic. Nobody was defending a formula because there wasn't one yet. Everything could still change. Nothing was sacred. That freedom is why the first breakthrough could happen at all. It came the day Henson stopped treating Kermit like a performer and gave him a job. Kermit finally became Jim Henson.
It's the Muppet Show with our very special guest star, Miss Juliet Prowse.
Kermit had already existed for about 20 years. He'd never been the center of anything. On Sesame Street, he could be a little impatient. On late-night talk shows, he was Jim's sarcastic sidekick. Likeable, easy to have around, but not yet the heart of anything. The new job changed him completely, because for the first time, Kermit had something to lose. On The Muppet Show, Kermit runs the theater. He has to hold the whole impossible thing together. The performers, the writers, the explosions, the guest stars, the monstrous egos. Every week, the show nearly collapses. And every week, Kermit is the one sane creature keeping it upright.
Right there, this is our company Wise Man, right there. Harry, no more explosions, huh? Okay.
Now look at who was doing that exact job off camera in real life. Jim Henson. Holding together performers, writers, chaos, and egos day after day, quietly refusing to let it fall apart. Kermit was Jim, with one difference. Jim almost never lost his temper. He kept the frustration folded up inside. Kermit got to let it out. Every flail of those little green arms was the feeling Jim swallowed. And that's the moment audiences fell in love with him. Not because he got sweeter, because his frustration finally made sense. You have been in exactly that room. The meeting nobody runs. The family that won't listen. The team held together by one person who never gets thanked. You didn't love Kermit because he was a frog. You loved him because he was you. But one relatable frog can't carry a whole show. And most of the cast around him still wasn't landing. Fozzie, Gonzo, and Piggy were almost wrong. Here's a version of the Muppets you never got to see. And it's a little disturbing. A Fozzie whose jokes just made you wince.
I don't approve of belly dancers. Why can't they dance on the floor like everyone else?
A Gonzo who was genuinely depressing.
What'd he say? Basically, he said that our reality is just an illusion, created by special effects.
No wonder I'm broke. I can't afford myself.
A Miss Piggy nobody remembered. These characters weren't born perfect. Several were born wrong. Start with Fozzie. Early on, his voice was lower and rougher, and his endless failing didn't read as funny. It read as sad. A comedian who bombs isn't automatically a joke. He's a man in pain, and you look away. So they rebuilt him. New puppet, higher voice, softer edges. And the exact same failure flipped. Now his terrible jokes were lovable because you could see how badly he hoped. The hecklers up in the balcony learned the trick, wound him, but never quite crush him. Then Gonzo. His performer Dave Goelz was new and unsure of himself, and it bled into the character. Early Gonzo was a gloomy, uneasy thing lurking in the background. Then they found the crack that saved him. Gonzo thinks his disasters are brilliant art, but underneath the bravado he is aching for someone, anyone, to approve. That gap, how great he thinks he is against how much he needs you, is the whole lovable creature. Notice the pattern. The fix was never to make them win. It was to let them keep losing and make you love them for it. Which brings us to the pig nobody had a plan for, and the single second that changed everything. One karate chop made a star.
Excuse me, guys. We're looking for Hollywood. Do you know anything about the way to Hollywood? Hollywood, California? No, it's over near Los Angeles. Have you ever been to Los Angeles?
Frank Oz raised the pig's arm and swung. Not the gentle slap the script asked for. A sudden, full-force karate chop straight across Kermit. The room fell apart laughing, and in that single motion, a whole character snapped into being. Because look at what that chop actually held. Miss Piggy wants to be a glamorous lady. She wants to be loved, desperately. And the instant she's frustrated, she answers with brute violence. Elegance and rage in one body in the same half-second. That contradiction was the character. She'd been nothing before, a background pig handed around between performers with no plan behind her. Nobody knew what she'd become. One unscripted swing told them. Now she was dangerous, unpredictable enough to bully Kermit and steamroll a world-famous guest star in the very same scene. By the second season, Oz had her full time, and Piggy was climbing toward the top of the whole show. And notice what really happened there. Nobody sat in a room and engineered a breakout star. They stayed loose. An accident revealed something better than the plan, and they were paying enough attention to grab it. Which raises the question that had been quietly strangling the show from the start. It wasn't a character problem at all. It was that famous people still saw the whole thing as beneath them. The guest stars had to be talked into it.
What's that scenery? I promised Carol a variety show she's gonna get one. That's Pigs in Space. But what about the dance marathon?
Oh, don't worry.
Yeah, we've got a compromise.
Here's something that sounds impossible now. In the beginning, stars didn't want to do the show. Think about what they were being asked. Fly to London, get paid less than a normal job, appear on a puppet show with no American prestige yet. Most passed. The team booked the early guests on relationships and favors, worked hard by Henson's agent, Bernie Brillstein. But once a star actually showed up, something changed. The producers made each guest the only human in their episode, the sole star surrounded by Muppets. Then they asked a rare question. Not, here's your promo bit, but what do you want to do? A singer could try comedy. A serious actor could be silly. There were warm dinners and real attention. People left having had the best week of work in ages. So the guests started telling other guests. That's the reversal hiding in plain sight. Celebrities didn't join because the show was already important. The show became important because the early ones wouldn't stop raving about how free it felt. Then one world-famous artist turned that quiet word of mouth into a public stamp of approval. Nureyev made the industry take it seriously. The greatest ballet dancer alive is on a London soundstage dancing a love duet with a pig. Stop and let that be as strange as it actually is. His name was Rudolf Nureyev, and there was no more serious artist on Earth. The last human being you'd expect within a mile of a Muppet. Before him, the show had to beg for every guest it got. And here's the part nobody saw coming. He came to them. Nureyev approached the Muppets and asked to appear. They asked what he'd like to do. He said, dance with Miss Piggy. So they built a full human-sized ballerina pig just for him and staged a ballet they called Swine Lake. The press lost its mind. The most exalted dancer in the world flinging a pig across a stage for laughs. And in one stroke, the question that had haunted the show for 2 years died. No serious person could call this a kids show ever again. The very highest of high art had walked in the door and asked to play. After that, look who lined up. Steve Martin, Peter Sellers, John Cleese, Julie Andrews, Elton John. The floodgates opened. But turn it over, because the real prize is on the other side. Nureyev didn't lend the Muppets his dignity. The Muppets gave him something rarer, permission to be ridiculous. That's the gift television almost never offers its most serious people, and they had it to give away. By the second season, the writing, the characters, and the reputation had all turned, and at last, so did America. The rejected show became the biggest on Earth. Now everything clicked. Jerry Jewell, the writer they hadn't trusted, took over as head writer, and the show finally sounded like itself. The dead weight was cut. The opening got tight and fast. The hecklers got a real spot up front. Piggy and Gonzo were redesigned and pushed forward. New bits arrived like the crew of Pigs in Space. Guest stars were now easy, everyone wanted in. And the show America had rejected became something the world had never seen. It reached that staggering number from the very start of this story, 235 million people across more than 100 countries. It won major awards. It reportedly slipped even behind the Iron Curtain onto Soviet television in the middle of the Cold War. Every American executive who'd said puppets were only for kids had been wrong in front of the entire planet. So this is the part where we should just enjoy the victory. Except one question ruins the celebration. At the exact moment the world wanted more, Jim Henson decided to stop. 5 seasons and done. Why would anyone walk away from the biggest show on earth? Why America got it wrong. Start with why he left, because it explains the man. Henson never wanted to run one show forever. He'd made enough episodes to sell them as reruns for years, and those reruns would quietly fund whatever he dreamed up next. The Muppet movies had already proved his characters could leave the theater. His mind was moving toward bigger, stranger, darker worlds. So he ended it while people still loved it. He'd rather leave early than overstay. Now, finally, the real answer to the mystery. America didn't reject the Muppet Show because it was bad. America rejected it because of how it looked. Executives judged the surface, and the surface sent mixed signals they couldn't resolve. Foam and bright colors said children. A variety format said adults. Movie star guests said mainstream. A backstage full of workplace squabbles said grown-up sitcom. Characters with real feelings said everyone. Put it together and there was no category. And executives buy categories. They finance the familiar, the thing they can name in one sentence. Henson was holding something they had no words for. So they called it a kids show because foam was the only clue they trusted, and they passed. That was the mistake. Not that the audience was too small, that the audience was too big. Bigger than television's little boxes let those men imagine. Jim Henson spent years being told grown adults would never care about puppets. Then hundreds of millions of adults tuned in, because those puppets felt more human than most of the people on television. The networks were looking for a show they already recognized. Henson quietly handed the world one it had never seen before, and could never forget. So here's what I'll leave you with. When did you first realize The Muppet Show was never really just for kids?